So hi Satyarthi, welcome. Today we have Satyarthi with us on our channel, and we invited him to share and talk to us about his work. And just a small introduction about Satyarthi. He's been with Osho for more than 4 decades. He started off as a professional dancer in the US, and he's been learning and doing massage from different schools and methods for many years. I'll invite him to give us more detail. But over this time period, I get a feeling he's consolidated all of his learning into methods which are referred to as rebalancing or myofascial energetic release. So these are things which are created by him or have happened to got created through him, and he shares that with people. He trains people in that methodology. I guess he's trained more than 3,300 people, must be a bigger number now that you've trained through this period. And he also offers another group called by the name Path of Love. So we're going to talk to him today, and maybe just to begin with, if you could tell us a little more about yourself, something which I've missed, and we start with that, and then some more interesting questions coming up later.
Okay, just about myself.
Yes.
Okay, I came to Osho in '76. I was 24, so I found out about Osho doing my work. Actually, I was 24, and I was living in California, and I was doing the work. I was teaching and leading workshops, and sannyasins started to come. So they turned me on to Osho, and I really felt the attraction to Osho by reading him. I grew up in California, and it was in the 60s, and I went to different spiritual masters from an early age, actually from 16.
Wow.
That came to California, pseudo masters, but they were Indian being masters, and then I always felt like, no, this is not my thing. And then I just started reading Osho, and that was it. And I met the sannyasins, and they were very alive and fun and juicy, and there was a certain connection I had with them, and also Osho's words. So I had plans, man. I had big plans already. I was gonna go to a naturopathic school and teach bodywork, and then learn naturopathy and start a clinic, and I had all these plans. And then Osho I got rid of all my plans, and I came to Pune in '76. And basically I've been with Osho ever since. Osho had that time when he left the body, and in '90, and then I had a short time. I went for 6 years actually into another spiritual community with another master, pseudo master. But I've been on the search since I'm 14. 14 I think, and I'm still searching. It's not that I'm not finding things. I'm finding, but not what Osho's pointing to, not awakening. I'm not finding that. And all the time that I've been with Osho, I always did my work in what they call now the multiversity, and then around the world. In the communes, it was the multiversity, and I always did top body work and did it. We created rebalancing, me and another man, Himalayan Buddha.
That's right.
And then we taught that for many years. We taught many years, long trainings, like 4-month trainings every day. So I've been doing that for ages, and it's like, I still, after all these years, I've been doing body work professionally since, I was doing body work since 71 or 72. And I still have a lot of energy for it, and I still give it a lot of energy. I still am very excited by it, and it keeps evolving, and the body work all over the world is evolving, and a lot of research is being done, and it's actually not called massage, called body work. There's a distinction, but anyway, yeah, I've been doing it for that long, and it keeps evolving. My work keeps evolving, and my understanding keeps evolving. And I also study. I keep studying. I keep doing trainings, with other people to see how they teach and to learn new things, And I read a lot and watch a lot of video and just to incorporate and to keep it fresh and new. Yeah. So it's a big part of my life. The work is somehow a connection to my purpose or my meaning,
I understand that somewhere this journey also took you to working on Osho's body as well for a while. I mean, you worked with him for about 4 months, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I worked on Osho, it was in Pune 1. So it was, what was it? It was I think it was 79 or 80. Can't remember. And he hurt his back somehow. And I was asked to come in and work on him. Actually, to tell the truth, I was teaching trainings with this man. His name was Daniel here. He was a sannyasin, but he was called Daniel. And he was a really good body worker. And he was the first one to get called in. He was called in. I was so jealous. I remember feeling so jealous. It was like my lover was taken by somebody. And then after 3 weeks, a month or something, working with Osho stopped with him, and then they called me, and that was the first time. And I think that went on for about 3 weeks. And of course, it was very exciting. And then when I came back here in Pune 2, after the ranch, after it was in the 80s, what was that,
85, 86?
Yeah, 85, 86 or something like that. And then I was called in to work on Osho again, and that went on for 3 months, basically, every day, sometimes twice a day even. And yeah, I mean, what to say about that? It was like an awesome experience. It was kind of a pinnacle of the experiences I've had in my life, to be able to every day have an hour and a half with Osho and touch his body and work with him and just have that connection. And I was like, first I'd go in and I'd always be nervous. There would always be a nervousness, like, like, just because it was Osho, so. But he always was very soft and very loving, and he always put me at ease, And then, of course, there's the whole movie around Osho, which is like a circus, It's pretty intense. It's not, if you don't know it, it's not what you think it is, in those days. There's a lot going on, And if you become part of that caretaking of him, which I did, you also get involved with that whole part of it. But the actual experience of being with him he was very inquisitive. So he would take off his robe. He'd come in with a lungi, just with a lungi and no shirt. And he'd have these shorts on underneath. He'd take off his lungi. And then we had this table that was on near Chantazu, on the other side where his room is, but in those days it was Vivek's room. Just the room beside it, behind that door, the green door. And then he would just be very sweet, and he'd lie down, and I'd tell him what to do, and then he'd just give me feedback constantly. He'd say, this is a pain point. Why is that a pain point? Does everybody have a pain point there? Is that to do with the right side of my brain? Could be on the left side of his body. Is that the right side of my brain and related to that with the pain there? Is it stored there? He would just like throw out all this stuff. And I never understood why exactly. And then he'd say, would you like me to continue to ask you these things? And I'd say, sure, And so then I'd go back and study as much as I could to try to be as understanding as I could to what he was sharing with me. And but it would go on like that. He would always say pain point, it was a pain point, or a pain point, or a pain point. And there was a time he came to me with a bad shoulder. That was the thing. He had a bad shoulder from doing this, I think. And and so I would work on his shoulder, and then at one point he started, and his arm and his chest, and then at one point he said, no, I'd like you just to do complete body sessions, like just do my whole body, and we'll just do it for a while. And so I was, of course, very happy, you know. And then for a while he was really getting better, his shoulder was getting better, Vivek would tell me, you know, that he was feeling better in his body than he had felt in years. And I felt like I was riding off into the sunset, you know, with the ultimate lover, you know, and this was going to go on forever, and I was always going to be by his side. This was my fantasy, because it was such an experience to be that close to him and to touch him. And you know, in the actual experience of it, while I was doing it, of course I knew it was him, and you know, and it was very, very interesting. But I wasn't like necessarily getting a contact high while I was doing it. I was just working with him, and then I would leave. He would leave, and he had a whole ritual. Everything was always very structured, and then I'd walk out, and I was so altered. I was altered in ways I'd never been altered. You know, I felt like I just was on a very strong drug, and it would last for hours. That would just last for hours. Just the contact of touching him and being that close all the time. You know, and he was very loving the whole time. Sometimes he was like playing with me. He would do things, you know, like I would say, turn over. Like he'd lie on his back, I'd look him in the eyes and I'd say, Osho, turn over, and he wouldn't turn over. And he'd just keep looking at me, and then I'd say, Osho, please turn over, and he wouldn't do it. And I'd look at Amrito, you know, it was always Amrito and Vivek were there. It was the time of Vivek, and then I wouldn't look quiet, and I'd say, Osho, turn over, and I'd take his shoulders and start. And then he would do it, you know. But he would do things like that just to see, I guess, just to see my reaction, you know, how I'd react. He was very, very sensitive in his body, but never had pain. I mean, he would have pain, but and I'd go very deep into painful areas, but he never had any change in his breathing, for instance. Like everybody that I work on, or deep body workers work on, if you work very deep and it's painful, their breathing shifts, or they have a reaction to it at some point. His breathing never changed. It was always so shallow you could hardly ever see his breath. And so it was just evidence for me that he was not identified with the body. Of course he wanted his body to feel good because he lived in it, but he wasn't identified with it, you know. It was like he was not the body. And so he never had any reaction, ever. It was interesting to see, you know, and he was very, very childlike, you know. He had like an innocence, extreme innocence. Like he'd come in and he'd have like these wide eyes, and he was always very sweet. But also, you know, you when you see him in a lecture, or you saw him if you happened to see him in darshan, he was always the man, the authority. You know, he was sweet and funny, and you know, but in this setting, he was just like a kid sometimes. He was like very innocent, and really like a child. Like he says that an awakened person has the childlike energy and the wisdom of the ages, you know. But he really had the innocence of a child. And sometimes at the end, Vivek or Amrita for some reason wouldn't be there, because they always took him out. Actually, Vivek did. And sometimes they wouldn't be there, so it was up to me, you know. So I had to bring him to his room, because he didn't do nothing, you know. He would come off the session, I'd put him up, I'd bring his shoes under, put his shoes on, and then I'd take him by the hand, and I'd go out to where the lights were for the hallway, and I didn't know which light was which, and then I would try. He'd know nothing, you know. and I finally find the light, and then he was just like a kid, you know, like a 5-year-old, you know, but in a very sweet way, a way that made you want to take care of him. You wanted to really take care of him. You got very touched, and I felt very much like just so much empathy and love and compassion for him. And it changed my life. That, I mean, at the time it was very strong. You know, I did it for, I don't know, 90 sessions or something. And it was very, very strong. And it was like, it changed my life. You know, it altered my consciousness at that time very strongly. I couldn't figure out what was mine and what was his at one point. You know, and then going to lectures, and I was going to the lectures, and I was just so in love with him, you know. But, you know, this is all the beauty of it. There was also intense. It wasn't always that. It was like sometimes he wasn't feeling good after the next day. He wasn't feeling very good and in his body, and then I would feel so responsible. It was like somehow I, you know, falsely I took this on as if it was somehow my responsibility for him to feel it was good. And if he wasn't, I felt like, oh my God, it's my fault. And so you had that element of it, and you had the element of all the stuff that happens in the commune. Yeah. And all of the politics and the intensity of the women who were around him, you know, which was strong sometimes, and you know, would come at me. But somehow it wasn't overwhelming me. It didn't. I could handle it in a way, and of course, you know, you live in a commune, and everybody knows you're working with Osho every day, and it's like. It's an interesting experience. You know, all these people suddenly see you in a different way, and relate to you in a different way because of the experience. And you know, it was that's a part of it too. You know, the whole relationship that happens with the commune and the people within the commune changes dramatically if you do it over a period of time, like I did. And that was very beautiful, actually. I got so much in that also from people. You know, I got so much love and so much. It was just a really beautiful experience. And it changed the way in which I taught. He told me things, you know. He told me when there's pain points, that you always stay with pain points, you know. And then when you teach people, always tell them to stay with the pain points. Those are very important points. And he didn't do much talking. It wasn't extremely personal. You know, at the end, he would, once in a while I'd get a message from Nilam, who was in charge then, who was the secretary, that Osho says this to you, or that to you, you know. But it wasn't really personal in that way. It wasn't like he gave me a lot of feedback about me. He would give me a lot of feedback each moment about the work. But it was just, I had a function. But he was as aware as I was and everybody else was that I was getting 100 times more out of it than he was, you know. And he knew that, you know. But it was never spoken. Nothing was ever spoken, you know. And so I became so attached. It was like the highlight of my life every day, you know, and just to go in there and to meet him, and it was always fresh, you know. It was never like you get used to it. I never got used to it, like, okay, now I'm going to do another session on Osho. It was always like, whoa, okay, here it comes again, you know. And it was always like, wow, because he's so in the moment. And, you know, we all know he's so in the moment, and that's what awakening is, and he's an awakened man. And but he is in that innocent and very, you know. And then at the end of a session, he would have a short sign, and he'd stand up and he'd start talking. There would be me, Vivek, and Amrito. Amrito was always there, and then he'd take his lungi and he'd do just like this with one hand as he was talking. Shh, boom. With one hand, you just fold it like this, like really fast, and then boom, and then tuck it in. And I was just like, wow, that's really really amazing, you know? And he was so graceful. He just had like you know, we know that Osho's full of grace, you know, but he was full of grace. Because in that setting also, he just had so much grace. Everything, every moment with him had a certain grace, you know. Sometimes he'd ask questions about something, or he'd start talking about the commune, or to Amrito, or to Vivek, or about a person, stuff I actually shouldn't be hearing, you know. But he was just, I was there and doing my thing, and he would just start, you know. He would start doing his business, actually, when talking about this and that, and what's going to happen in the commune, and this person, and what to do with that person, and that person, and then Nirvana would always say, never share any of this, never, you know, and I would be okay. Yeah, that went on for like 3 months, and then suddenly finished. Like one day to the next. I mean, I could have everything finishes, you know. I went in and they said, no, he's finished with it. And it was like, oh God. It was like being hit in the chest, you know. But I was very grateful. To be honest, I just was extremely grateful and honored to have had that experience. Yeah, I learned a lot about myself, and in ways it was more energetic than anything else. It was just because his energy was so strong, and it would just penetrate me. So every day I was getting this kind of, you know, his energy penetrating me through touching him like that, and then it was, I would come out of it and I was like, whoa, I just like, I felt like, wow, I never felt like that before, you know, and I never felt like that before, or rarely. And so I had that every day, you know, and it was just, it would start to add up, you know, and it would start to build on itself. It was very, very interesting, you know, and it was up to me just to somehow get out of the way, which is what I was aware of, that I just needed to get out of the way and just to let it in. But, you know, my main thing was my function, was to work on him. Right. You know, it wasn't just to receive his energy, but of course that was happening. And then and I was working on him the best I could. And then I was still teaching a training and going through, I mean, the commune would not let me, they would not give me slack. They wouldn't let me slack off on any of my work, or they were very kind of strict about it. Okay. That I had to keep it going at this point. Right. But you know, it gave me so much energy. It gave me so much energy, and it changed everything. Actually, it changed the way I work. Since then, I've worked differently. And sometimes it's subtle and that's hard to describe, but for a long time I felt my work was, I was more in when I was working, because that's what would happen there. And I somehow could remember that, and I was just more in myself. While I was working, I felt myself stronger. And then it just created more of a presence while I was working, more presence. But it also changed my relationship with him, and it just, my heart, you know, opened on another level to him than I had before. You know, I just was more somehow melted. It wasn't busted open. I was more melted, open, just through that experience, you know.
Yeah, thanks so much, because it's so touching to hear it. I mean, I'm finding it hard to keep my tears back as I hear it. Yeah, so in a way, like you working on him, but in some ways I feel like he's working on you also, right? Professionally, and even as a meditator, like, you know, and on your being, like there is some work happening throughout this journey. So thanks so much for sharing this. It's really powerful. So maybe we switch to body work. Sorry, I called it massage earlier. But in terms of different lines of learning which you've learned from, and then how did it get integrated into the current work and the trainings that you offer, if you'd like to talk about that.
well, like you were sharing, I taught rebalance. We created rebalancing, me and this other man. Mostly me and this other man. There was a little help from somebody else. And we did that for years and years and years and years here. And it, you know, and everybody had their way of doing it. Now there's like numbers of schools of rebalancing around the world, and it's still going strong. And you know, that included a lot of different things. But my focus, my personal focus, was always deep body work. And I stayed true to that till now. You know, I always loved to do very deep body work, which was, you know, initially created by Ida Rolf in Rolfing, or structural integration. And in the 70s here, they had a lot of Rolfers.
Right.
And I was doing postural integration here, but it was also deep body work, same basic structure. And but I was working with them, and then I ended up teaching with them. And I learned a lot of body work teaching here and doing body work here from the years, you know, from the 70s and then in the ranch in the 80s and back here again in the 90s. And I learned a lot because there was a lot of good body workers, you know, and because nobody was getting paid. Everybody was sharing, you know, and everybody was sharing sessions, sharing knowledge. Nobody was kind of holding on to their system and not sharing it. Everybody was sharing it. And I was like very curious, and I wanted to learn like many. And so I just learned a lot about bodywork. And then, you know, as an Osho body worker, we were meditating, and meditating was the, you know, what Osho was teaching us, the essence of what he was teaching us. So we brought a lot of meditation into the work, you know, into the trainings, but also into the practice of being present while doing sessions and using touch as a form of meditation, you know, touching but being present in the touch, enough presence to be mindful. And that mindfulness, then a session becomes a meditation in a sense, if you can do that, you know, and it's not always possible, you know, if you do a lot of sessions. But that's my practice when I do the work, actually. You know, and I've been consistent with bodywork, deep bodywork, since 73 when I learned it. I think it was 73. So I've been consistently teaching it and doing it, and so it's been a long journey actually for me, 46 years or 47 years this year, and it evolves. Of course, it evolves, you know, because if it doesn't evolve, you lose juice for it. I lose interest in it, so I have to keep it evolving. And it evolves in subtle ways, in small ways, not in large ways usually. You know, I study stuff, and then I keep studying new forms of body work or old forms of body work with other teachers or through video, like I said, or through books, and incorporating it and practicing new ways of touching, you know. And I also do therapy, so I bring a lot of emotional awareness and release in a trauma release into the body work also. Yeah, and breath actually. So I work with people in a kind of in a holistic way. And this new form of body work I did, I'm doing myofascial energetic release. It's based on deep body work and joint work. And you know, I touch softly too, but it's also with breath and with what's called unwinding, where people start to find movement, which is a kind of movement education, where people start to spontaneously, like a latihan, kind of like a latihan, but we call it myofascial unwinding, where spontaneously start to release through their own nervous system, through movement. And so it has a movement component, and it has an emotional component, and it has somewhat of a psychological component, but I don't work too much with the psychology, a little bit, because I have the skill personally, but I don't so much. I work, but it's very centered also around working with people with pain syndromes. You know, because deep tissue work, like deep body work like I do, is a really good way if you know how to do it well and you understand where pain comes from. it's a very effective way of helping people that are in pain, any kind of pain in the body. Yeah,
Right.
and you know that's the biggest disease that people suffer from. Even Osho came because he had pain. You know, so it's the biggest disease that people suffer from is chronic pain on the planet. And so I teach people, and I work with a lot of people who are in pain, and I teach people to work with people who are in pain.
Right.
But not only I teach them to work with people, because people come that just want sessions, they want to grow, they want to expand, they want to release, and they want to open. So I work with that too. But once you get good at working with people with pain, there's so many people in pain that it tends to go in that direction, because those are the people that are asking for sessions. Yeah. And I have developed through my study, really, and experience, a certain way of, and a certain understanding of where pain comes from. And basically my understanding is that most physical pain is basically emotional suppression and some kind of psychological holding pattern based. If that's what's contracting what is called fascia, which is the connective tissue around all the other tissues of the body. It's the tissue in the body that's the most holistic tissue of the whole body, because it surrounds everything. And if you dissect a body, which I just did recently, I dissected a body, a fascial dissection, it's everywhere. Fascia is everywhere. You basically see the fascia.
Okay.
Fascia surrounds everything. It's a stretchable tissue. If you've ever eaten chicken, if you're not a vegetarian, and you see that white or clear film, or that white, strong tissue, that's all fascia. So fascia surrounds everything in the body. And recently there's been a huge research on fascia, and they found that fascia is also very sensual. It has a lot of sensuality. Yeah, it has proprioceptive sense, which tells you where you are in space. It has interoceptors, which basically tell you if you're hungry, if you're cold, if you're warm. That all lives in the fascia, and it also tells you where you are emotionally. And all of that information comes through the fascia.
Right.
Yeah, it's being spread through the fascia. That's very recently understood in the last 10 years. So I work with fascia, and to release fascia. When we're contracted, when we're held or locked up, we're in the body, we're held in our fascia. Our fascia is what contracts and molds us into a holding pattern. And most of that holding pattern is based on some type of emotional repression and psychological, holding negative beliefs, about ourselves, and ideas about ourselves, unworthiness and shame and fear, and that contracts the tissue, and we're held in that, and it has a psychological component, that's totally connected. So that's what I work with. I work with releasing the fascial holding patterns in the body. Pain is in the body 90% of pain, which is misunderstood by the medical system. So, it's the biggest disease on the planet.
That's right.
But the medical system totally misunderstands what it is. And it's an archaic system that they have. It comes from hundreds of years back, and they never let it go. So there's so many people that don't get diagnosed correctly, and therefore don't get treated correctly, and stay in pain their whole life. It's sad, but where the pain comes from, 90% of pain in people's body, where it comes from, is contraction of fascia. Because fascia holds a certain nerve receptor called a nociceptor, which is a pain receptor.
Okay.
And when there's enough contraction, it contracts on those nociceptors, and that's what we feel. If it's a low-grade pain, it's because the contraction is less. And if it's a stronger pain, it's because the contraction is stronger. And that's where we feel pain. And mostly they say, the medical world says it's in the joint, it's, there's something structurally damaged in joints. That's where or discs in the back, but it's not that, it's in the soft tissue, it's in the fascia. So therefore, this work not just my work, it's just one of the works that is around the world, but my work is very effective with working with people that are in pain.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's also very good for people who want to deepen their meditation. Because, and Osho always said that to us body workers, that this is really good for people to meditate. Because what it does is it opens space three-dimensionally in the body and creates more space and therefore more freedom of movement, more flow of energy. And in that space, people can witness better. People can have more awareness of in their meditation, because when you close your eyes, what are you aware of? Mostly you're aware of your body. You're watching your thoughts, or your thoughts are going on. Your feelings might be there, but your body is always there, and it's giving you information. You're watching your breath, or you're watching sensation. And of course, if your body is much more open and flowing energetically, your meditation is going to deepen. And he always said that. He said, this is really good for meditators. And all meditators, he said, should receive this type of body work.
Yeah.
And that was impressive to me also, when he shared that with us. So especially when you're working in the commune where everybody's meditating, In the world, it's a little bit different, because some people are meditating that I work on. But, people come, I work in different places, but I live in Germany, I live in Greece, and I do sessions in China a lot. People come, they're not necessarily meditators, they're just in pain.
Right.
And somebody told them that this guy is good at working with pain. So they show up from all over Europe mostly, sometimes even Saudi Arabia or something, to Cologne or to Corfu. And then I put them on a program of 5 or 6 or 7 sessions, and they stay for that time. Yeah. Now my new vision is I want to start a treatment center in Greece, and my wife, she's going to do gyrotonics and fascial fitness, and that's all movement work, and she'll have a part of it, and I'll bring this other guy I'm doing it with, who's a student of mine, but he runs trainings of my work also, and he's good, and we're going to do it together. So we'll probably try to get 5 or 6 session spaces and bring students in and just build it up, into a clinic, so that for a certain amount of months every year we have a clinic there, and people can do a whole program. We'll put them on a program.
Right.
It's just something, it's just my new vision of what I want to do with the work.
I mean, I must share my own experience that, when I saw you about a year back, the last time, I've had sessions from you, and I probably mentioned to you that, Satyarthi, I'm missing something. I've been having this backache for a long time. And like you said, this working with the body, like it was not just working with the body, understanding the emotional layers from then on, and then in a way from meditation point of view. So I feel about 90-95% fine, and I could see my own fear patterns which were coming in the way and which was causing a pain in the knees or in the back, and they were probably related in some way. And moment it was so much freeing for me, not just in the body, but call it emotionally and even at a being level, and it certainly helps me to, go deeper as a meditator as well, to just get that key, the connection. And I was just wondering whether we still call it only body work, or it's something more. Actually, it's more than work. I think in a way the body is being used as a pathway to work on a person, but you're working on something much deeper through this. Probably, I don't know. That is my experience.
It can be for sure. Yeah. The one area which I'm weak on is receiving sessions, and I'm just weak on it. And sometimes then I go to somebody who's a really good deep body worker, and I receive some sessions. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's what it does to you. I do it so much, and then when I get a really good sessions, I'm like, oh, that's what it feels like to not just during the session, but after the session. And I realize it's a very strong experience.
It is.
It's not just you release something and then the pain goes away, but it's a consciousness shifts.
There's a re-imprinting of some kind which is happening through this.
Yeah,
Probably.
a repatterning.
A repatterning.
Yeah, and it's a repatterning, yeah, and you're releasing trauma, basically old trauma, but also you're waking the body up, you know, because the fascia, the main sensory system is within the fascia, and as the fascia becomes more fluid, and more flowing, because when it's contracted, it gets very glued together. Everything starts to glue together, and you see it in people. Their movement patterns become very limited. If you watch people, you know, walking, you know, India is a little better. People flow a little more in India, I have to say, but in the West, they're contracted, you know, and they hardly move, really, just, you know, and when the fascia releases, you have two different types of movement. You have the movement of the body, the actual mechanical movement of the body, but you also have a motility, which is movement of energy through the body.
That's what I was feeling.
And when that happens and your body wakes up, it's a shift of consciousness.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember running on the beach in Goa after sessions from you, and it was such an experience, you know, because I was running after 20-30 years. It was quite an experience for me to sort of have a breakthrough.
To be able to run again.
To be able to run on the beach, yeah, it was very nice, yeah. Okay, so I know I wanted to ask you about the other work that you do, the Path of Love as well. Would you like to share something about that? Or
okay. You know, what can I say? You know, it's this very strong group process. It's a week-long group process where it's residential and people are in silence when they're not in the group. And we work very hard. It's called the Path of Love because we work very hard and very intensely, I shouldn't say hard, but very intensely. We have a big staff to start with. If there's a group, like we're just about to start one, so there'll be 30 people in the group, and we have a staff of 36 people, or 38 people. So, and that staff supports the participants in every way possible, and also creates a field of empathy for the participants. And the staff, including the leader, myself, and the other leader, we all do the work in the morning. We do the same work we have the participants do in the morning before the group starts. So we also open ourselves, you know, and then it's like a transmission, the Path of Love, because it creates a very strong energy in the room, a very big energy. It's bigger than the leaders. I always say that. It's what happens in the Path of Love is much bigger and more powerful than what the leaders can bring themselves. And it works very much with exposure work. Also, you have these small groups, and somebody stands in front of the group. Each, you know, say 8 people, and each one of those small groups has leaders. And you expose, and you emotionally expose. You expose basically your pain, your anger, your fears, and you do that a lot every day. So you're out there in front, and that's very scary, you know. It's very scary to open yourself in front of people. You know, what is the fear? You know, the fear is, it's just an old fear to expose, you know, fear you're going to get hurt or you're going to get judged or shamed. So we do that a lot, and it opens people's heart on a very deep level. And then there's a kind of Sufi element to the group where we do this thing called a burn meditation, which comes from Kabir. Supposedly Kabir, when he died, his disciples asked him, what can you say to us? And he said, burn, burn, burn. And then he died. And meaning burn off all things that are false to get to what's essential. So we work with this work. We have our own DJ, and we have all these staff working with the participants, and we guide it in a sense, and it's not structured. It's very emotional, but it's very energetic also. People can dance also, so they're free to do and move. Sometimes people sit for a while, and they're free to work in whatever way they are working. And it just creates, that group creates a real depth and a real sense of intimacy. I always say it's a school of intimacy. It teaches people how to be intimate with each other. And it creates a strong family, you know, of people that are involved with it. Very strong. And so, but because of the level of intimacy that it creates, it's a really good school of intimacy. You know, we work with longing, the longing for truth, the deepest longing, the longing for truth. We use a lot of Osho quotes and other people also, but especially Osho, around longing. We work with prayer. I know Osho didn't really work with prayer, but he had a lot of quotes about prayer. And we work with prayer not in a Christian or a Jewish sense or a Hindu sense, but just in the way that Osho taught prayer, more spontaneous outburst of the heart, to existence or to the beloved. And so we work with that. So it's a devotional process. It goes beyond therapy. It really does. I'm very lucky that I lead it. When Osho died, I went to San Diego. There was some people, friends of mine, who were good therapists, and they went to San Diego, and they came out and they said, "Hey, man, you got to go here and do this thing. It was called the Miracle of Love." And so I went, me and my wife at the time, and we did it, and we were just blown away. And so I lived there for 7 years. And we had these other masters, and one was a very beautiful woman who really, really helped me. She wasn't a true master in the sense that Osho was a master, even though she thought she was, but she was a force of nature. She was powerful, and she affected me more than any person in my life except Osho. Osho affected me more than anybody, but she's second. And in a very different way, because it's very energetic and personal. And the work is very personal and energetic and life transforming. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be part of it, and because I've been involved with it so long, it's been a teacher. It's been one of the main teachers I've had since Osho's died. Is this work? It definitely has an understanding, and it has a way of keeping my fire more alive. You know how it is. You live with a master and the commune, and it keeps your fire alive as best it can stay alive, up and down, but in some way. And then you go out in the world and do your things. Luckily I work with people for a living, but and it's easy to get kind of like to lose that fire, and to get caught up in that whole part of the world. The world is strong, the collective is strong. So this work is one of the things that keeps my fire burning, my longing stronger, and so that I keep going and keep exploring my transformation. Because consciousness is so elusive, I find it so elusive, you're growing, and then suddenly you're back in something, and then you're growing again into something, and then it's just like you're stuck in some place, and you know what I mean. And so in this work, it's very, very, it's very powerful. It's very passionate work. It's extremely passionate and emotional, and I'm very emotional, so it fits me. I'm very emotional, so the work always fit me very well, that level of emotional opening, and to own the emotion, not to blame, not to make it somebody else's fault, but to just that I have this pain, I have this anger, I have this hurt, and we do that in the path of love. We really get people to own their feelings, and then turn the emotional opening into the longing, and then the longing into the prayer. That's the idea. And so that there's a kind of a deeper place that comes on, deeper than therapy, more spiritual. And it always works. I'm always amazed. I'm not amazed anymore, really, because I've been doing it too long, but it always works. It always works as a collective. That's the thing. It's a strong collective. Now we're just about to do it here, and now 30 people will come in who's staff here, just for the staff, and they'll come in, and it's people that come in staff every year, or I know from Greece where I do it in the staff, and so it creates a family.
And an energy field, I guess.
And an energy field. Within the group room, it's an energy field. It's a field of empathy that's there, and care, really. They get cared for in every way, touched, and every little thing is done for them. And but in the end, like all transformation, it's up to the person how deep they go. But this is a great container for people. You know, it is a group. In the end, Osho would have said, "Okay, it's a group." It's
Yeah,
I don't want to go too far with it, but it's a good group. You know.
Yeah. In a way, each of these are also a bridge towards meditation, bridge towards ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow, thank you. That's quite a lot, you know.
Yeah, that's
sharing.
a lot. Okay.
Is there anything else you have as a word for meditators in general, or anything else you want to add to if I've missed anything?
Did I miss anything, or
I'm
there's
just
something to meditators? I just keep on meditating, you know.
Okay.
What can I say, you know, just be consistent and be committed, you know. And that's what I try to do with myself. I try to meditate every day and to just be committed, you know, make more and more make my life my meditation, rather than just do a meditation practice. But try to find a way to make my life my meditation, which in some way I have to say, as I get older, it gets easier.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's hope for me then?
Yeah. It gets easier, and I'm serious. It gets easier. It's not that I'm saying I'm like that all the time, but I find myself in it more. I find just myself more in ease. Yeah. In a state of ease, a lot more than before. And it's just there. It's just like a sense. Feeling of ease and relaxation. And I find it as I get older, it comes on more so far.
Thank you so much. It was so beautiful to share with you. Yeah.